Right, we'll try not to mess up the microphone settings this time. Anyway, take two. Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. Hope you're all doing well out there, and it is Scorchio this weekend here in the UK. It's 30 degrees C plus. Hey, it may be even hotter where you are out there in the world. That's fine. You know, you can have that. I'll let you have that. Let me know down in the comments. But yeah, I think the most exciting thing for me, apart from the fact that I have this lovely air-conditioned studio to sit in, because believe it or not, air conditioning is still not really a thing here in the UK outside of offices and shops and things. Yeah, other than the fact that I have this beautiful, cool, cold air conditioning to sit in for the duration of today. We also have some quite epic thunderstorms coming tomorrow night, apparently, here in the Midlands. So very much something to look forward to. I do enjoy a good thunderstorm. Anyway, I suppose one other thing that I just need to address just before we get into the meat of this episode, or indeed the vegetarian or vegan alternative, if you are that way inclined. I am very, very tired this week. I am so tired. I was up until the early hours of this morning working on my latest video, essentially, the video that went out today, which is all about Bazzite, a Linux distribution that's very much focused on gaming and kind of uses the work that Valve have built for the Steam Deck, for Steam OS, Proton and all of that stuff, and adds a load of other awesome gaming stuff as well. But as usual, I will talk about that video at the end of this ramble, for those of you who aren't interested at all in my main channel. But for those of you who are interested in this channel and this podcast in particular, I think we've hit a bit of a milestone, and I just wanted to kind of mention this, I guess, because not only, I think it was yesterday, did Reese Rambles, or Reese, the YouTube channel that this actually goes out on, yesterday we hit 3,000 subscribers, which, you know, considering my main channel's got over 45,000, you'd think, oh, you know, 3,000, it's nothing. I don't care about that. It's only 3,000 people, but how impressive is that? That is so cool. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the second channel here. For those of you who do watch this on YouTube, it's very much appreciated and it's very cool. Always cool to hit a milestone like that. And I also suspect the number of viewers and listeners has been steadily increasing. Well, I say I suspect, I know for a fact because I look at the analytics. The number of viewers and listeners per episode has been gradually increasing as well over the past few months, to the point that last week's episode got 1,687 views, and on Spotify, 207 people streamed it and downloaded it, and 64 people played it directly on Spotify itself. I'm not quite sure what the distinction is there. So that's, 270 odd people plus 1,700-ish people. If we also include the other platforms, which I don't have access to the analytics for, so stuff like Apple, iTunes, whatever it's called, the other podcasting platforms. This is syndicated out. Loads of different platforms have picked up the RSS feeds for this, and I know there's a load of you out there who listen on things other than Spotify and on YouTube. I think that's the first time, really, we've kind of hit 2,000 views / listens in a week. Is that going to be a consistent thing going forward? That's very, very cool. So thank you again to everyone. Not sure if I'm delirious because of the lack of sleep. Obviously, it was also very hot last night, which didn't help, but yeah. Thank you to everyone who has supported the Reese Rambles podcast. But anyway, I guess if I don't want to lose all of you, I should probably get on and talk about some actual news. So let's do that. So for my first story this week, I'm going to dive straight into my Discord server and the Ramble Submissions channel over there. Quite a cool little community of people building up over there, posting lots of interesting stories and things, and makes my life a lot easier as well. Yeah, it means I don't have to do my own research. So thank you ever so much. No. Of course, a lot of this stuff kind of comes up on my radar as well, but I do appreciate the effort that people make to post stuff over there. So, of course, I will always give them full credit, and the first one goes to Technic. So, thank you, Technic, for posting this. And this is all about a classic Atari arcade game, one of my favourite games of all time, from 1979. So, I was going to say a relatively early one, but of course Atari had already been making games for years by that point. So, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it is kind of considered an early arcade game, so we'll give it that. But this has quite an interesting twist. So This story is over on hackaday.com, one of my favourite websites, and the headline here is Electromechanical Atari is a steampunk Meccano masterpiece. Now, there is a video that goes along with this as well, which I will show you a little clip of if you are watching this on YouTube, and of course I will link this in the usual places as well, so you can go check it out. But this thing is genius. So the story here, written here by Tyler August, I should say, full credit where it is due. If William Gibson and Bruce Sterling had written an arcade scene into the Difference engine, it probably would have looked a lot like Pete Wood's Meccano Martian Mission, as illustrated in the video below by the London Meccano Club. Meccano Martian Mission is an homage to Atari's 1978 Lunar Lander video game, but entirely electromechanical and made of, you guessed it, have you guessed it? Meccano. Obviously, is Meccano a thing outside of the UK? It must be. See, to me, like Meccano, I mean, it was kind of my parents' generation, I guess. Of course, I'm familiar with it, something I also played with as a kid. But to me, like Meccano and Lego have always kind of been equivalent. But yeah, I've kind of always thought of it as a peculiarly British thing. Interesting. Anyway, of course, it's these metal, bits and pieces with holes in, and get nuts and bolts, and you bolt them all together into various different constructions and contraptions, and you can motorize it and all the rest of it. Like I say, it's like metal Lego, I guess. And yeah, you might think Meccano is too modern to count as steampunk, the story continues, but it squeaks just into the Victorian era. Really, the first sets hit stores in 1901, the last year of Queen Victoria's long reign. Since then, Meccano has developed a large following that has produced some truly impressive constructions, and this arcade game can stand amongst the best of them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read out the entire story to you, of course. I don't want to take their views away from them, so yeah, you can click on the link and check that out. But a couple of things just linked from this, and there is that video. But firstly, this website is awesome. Look at this. The Runnymede Meccano Guild. And not only is this, I mean, I love the clean design of this. It's kind of simultaneously very 90s and also very modern as well. So hats off to you for this. But yeah, the Runnymede Meccano Guild. That is wonderful. Of course, Runnymede is it's a place in the UK, if you're not familiar with that. I think it's relatively local to me, actually. The geography is not my strong point. But yeah, this is just obviously the post by the creator of this thing, all about the history and how this thing came together and how it all works. So yeah, the model is based on the pioneering computer arcade game Lunar Lander, originally released by Atari in 1979. And the model is a two-dimensional flight simulator featuring a lunar landing craft descending towards a rugged mountainous terrain with various safe landing zones scattered around. The idea is to control the craft's descent using thrust and orientation and attempt to land safely on any chosen landing pad. The Meccano version replicates most of the original features, including 2 levels of difficulty, a thrust flame, a countdown timer, and a fuel gauge. Landing pads have score multipliers depending on their size and location. The original game zooms in for a close-up view as the ship gets closer to the ground. This feature was understandably beyond the scope of the Meccano version. Although I will say, if you want a closer view, you can just lean your head in a bit closer to it. That's a good suggestion. Maybe I'll suggest that. They probably thought of that. Anyway, there are of course some pictures here, obviously some original kind of designs and drawings and stuff like that, the original concept for this, and pictures of it. But if a picture tells 1,000 words, obviously a video must tell what? You've got like, 30 pictures per second, so, 30,000 words per second. Checks out, doesn't it? So as you can see, if you are watching this on YouTube, and for the benefit of those of you listening on the podcast platforms, I will describe this. So there is a red, you've got the red kind of terrain, the landscape, which in this case, obviously in the case of the original arcade game, you could fly around it left and right, and it would kind of, you could pick your landing pad and stuff. And we've got the landing pads on here as well, which are also built out of Meccano. And this thing is slowly rotating, so you've got this kind of slowly moving landscape that you've got to try to land your ship on. And the ship is at the top, and it's attached to these kind of 2 arms, this kind of scissor mechanism, and you control it with these 2 joysticks, and the ship kind of slowly descends and also rotates. So it has to be the right way around, and you also have to land very gently onto your chosen landing pad of choice. And you've got the time gauge and the fuel gauge that are slowly counting down as the game plays on. But yeah, this is quite the mechanical contraption, I think. I mean, this is a real labour of love, and I love stuff like this. Obviously, it's a really great arcade game as well. It's Atari, so it's close to my heart, and Yeah, such a cool thing. I highly, highly urge you to go and check out this YouTube video with the explanation of how it all works, because evidently a lot of work has gone into this. It's bloody brilliant. It's like a Wallace and Gromit contraption or something, isn't it? Wonderful stuff to kick off this week's Ramble. Thank you very much to Technic for submitting it. Just before we continue with this week's Ramble, I wanted to say a very big thank you to our sponsor, PCBWay.com, who, of course, sponsor my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, and also Reese Rambles. And it's not the usual sponsorship message this week, because they are celebrating their 11th year in business. They've been in the PCB fabrication business for 11 years. Of course, they also recently started offering some other services, including CNC machining, injection molding, and 3D printing. But they do have a special page on their website that they've set up to celebrate this most recent anniversary. And it's basically, it's a little game that you can go and click on and play, and you can win all sorts of exclusive offers and discount codes and stuff that you can then use on their website. So giving a little bit back to the community, of course, in addition to all of the support that they do provide for this community, and it is very much appreciated. So a big thank you to PCBWay.com for all of your support. I will link to that 11th anniversary competition down in the description and in the usual places on the podcast platforms. And that's the business side of things out of the way. So let's get on with the Ramble. Cast your mind back, if you will, to 1990, 35 years ago, if you'll believe it. I was 6 years old, and it feels like it was just yesterday, doesn't it? Yeah, certainly better times, I think. And apparently, one of the greatest years ever in gaming, believe it or not. Although I think you could probably argue that for most of the years in the 90s. And to be honest, I don't think I'd argue with you. I think you make a strong case for most of them. But yeah, the first few takes that I did of this story, I opened with that and just kind of went on to say, you know, I haven't actually bothered to look up a list, but I'm sure it was one of the greatest years in gaming, so we'll just roll with it. But at some point, I decided to actually Google it. I don't even know what take I'm on. I'm quite delirious. But yeah, at some point, I decided to Google it, and 1990 in gaming gave us Super Mario World on the SNES, the Super Nintendo, The Secret of Monkey Island, if you remember that. I'm sure you've probably heard of that little game. Metal Gear 2, Dr. Mario, which I think was on the Game Boy, was it? Mega Man 3, Loom, Pit Fighter. I mean, there's a whole list here. I'm not going to... Smash TV came out in 1990. Yeah, Railroad Tycoon. Anyway, it's a huge list. But perhaps the most noteworthy game, or certainly one of the most fondly remembered in the PC gaming world, was Wing Commander, the original Wing Commander. And for this, I'm going to refer back to this video by MVG, which he released around 7 months ago on his channel, Modern Vintage Gamer. And if you haven't seen this, definitely well worth a watch. It's it's quite short. It's only just under 20 minutes long, but it's a really interesting kind of retrospective and documentary about Wing Commander, which of course was a great space flight, space combat game. I'm sure it needs no introduction. Anyway, so I will link to that in the usual places. But the story here is something that Katrina shared with me, one of my Discord users and a good friend of mine, a very kind of active member of the community. So thank you to Katrina. And this is quite a huge breakthrough for Wing Commander fans. Apparently this is a first in 35 years of people playing and enjoying this game, because it has been a huge amount of work to get to this point. So I think this is well worth talking about and getting out there. And this is it's kind of a mod for the game, but the headline here is that it's a speed fix. Tripping over my words again. So the story here is on wcnews.com, which is a Wing Commander news site, if you hadn't guessed. And the headline, breaking news, Wing Commander speed fix release. Now, there is a lot more to this than just the speed fix, but the speed fix is the big headline here because it is apparently the first time someone has actually managed to achieve this in 35 years, which is absolutely brilliant. So, All Tinker has released the first public beta of his monumental Wing Commander All Tinker Overhaul mod. This is a patch for the original DOS version of Wing Commander that adds the speed limiter it has been missing all these years. This is a big deal. The patch works on both actual hardware and in DOSBox, which means that anyone, anywhere can finally play original Wing Commander the way it was meant to be played. The project also adds a host of bug and even content fixes, and adds support for 4-axis, 4-button joysticks, which means Wing Commander should play great with a controller. Alltinker writes, the most critical thing it does is introduce a game-wide sync-to-blank based speed limiting. To do this properly required a huge number of code changes, as many scenes in the game are coded slightly differently, requiring different approaches, and the effects of running on a fast machine varied widely. For instance, I've had to correct several hard-coded cutscenes since their timing was obviously set up without ever having seen them running at full speed. Here's a playthrough of the first mission using a 360 controller in a 4-axis, 4-button mode on the rough equivalent of a Pentium 90. And there is an embedded video here. And this video also kind of serves to remind us what was great about the game. Of course, it was very kind of lauded for its cutscenes. The quality of its animated cutscenes and the story in 1990 really did stand out. You know, we've got these fully animated things. Great story as well. Not to mention the gameplay too, of course, which is fantastic. I mean, look at this animation. But the trouble is, according to this story, the way that these various different elements were all put together, all these different animation styles, obviously using all sorts of different graphical tricks on the hardware of the time, is that it was all very, very much tied in with the speed of the PC that it was running on, which was very common at the time. But of course, as PCs got faster, that timing kind of started to fall apart and the game became unplayable, and the only real way to play it was to kind of throttle the speed of the machine that you're running it on. But depending on the method that you use, obviously that can introduce other issues potentially. And it's always best to have a proper speed fix. Now, yeah, evidently Alltinker here, and my hat is off to you, has gone through the entire game, picked all of the code apart, picked apart all of the different cutscenes, all of the different scenes in the game, all the gameplay, and basically unified all of the timing code across everything, so it's no longer tied to that system clock and actually all runs at the correct speed, no matter what speed of machine you run it on, which is quite a monumental achievement. So well done. There is another list. Of course, this is basically a mod that it's an overhaul mod, so it fixes all sorts of other issues and adds some other nice quality of life improvements, like that Xbox 360 controller support that I mentioned. And there is a big list of bug fixes and content fixes here as well. I'm not going to read all of these because there's absolutely loads of them, but it's fixed some issues with hanging notes on adlib cards. It's fixed, it's obviously completely overhauled the joystick routines as well. The copy protection has now been fully removed. I mean, I'm just kind of browsing the list here, but fixes for various bits of artwork and stuff that had issues, and there's a whole new DOS-based launcher for the game as well. Joystick calibration, adjusting settings, enabling and disabling various settings and improvements and things for the game, so you can take your pick. Improved save game system. It's so much stuff. So this looks absolutely fantastic for fans of the original game. It's called the Alltinker mod, which also happens to be the name of the person that has created it. Presume that isn't their actual legal birth name. Some kind of odd parental situation going on there if that is the case. But yeah, if you are a fan of Wing Commander and you are somehow still listening to me waffle on about it rather than immediately switching this off and going and reinstalling it, then I will link to this so you can go and download it and you can play it through again the way the original developers perhaps intended. Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Katrina. If you've been following my work here on YouTube for any length of time, and by that I mean way back before I had this studio, I've been doing this for, 6 years now? My goodness, I had that tiny little studio that I set up at home in the spare room, didn't I? My little computer room / office / whatever you call it. Yeah, wow, those were the days. That room doesn't even exist anymore, by the way. That's all been gutted and turned into like an office / craft room. It's all quite pink now. Anyway, that's kind of by the by. Yeah, you'll remember that I made some videos early on my channel about a game called Mr. Driller, which is a Namco arcade game. And yeah, I was a bit obsessed with it at one point, and I still have all of the plushies and stuff lying around the studio here. I still have my collection of Mr. Driller games and things on the Wonder Swan and the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance and stuff like that. I did sell my arcade boards. I did have the arcade boards as well, but I actually sold those at one point, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, why am I harping on about Mr. Driller? Well, one thing that a lot of people don't seem to know about that game is that it is an official sequel to a much-loved arcade game that came out much, much earlier. And that game was Dig Dug, believe it or not. Apparently Mr. Driller is I think he's supposed to be the son of the character in Dig Dug. I can't remember the names of the characters and stuff. It's been a few years since I looked into all of this stuff. So, and of course, I'm a big fan of Dig Dug as well. It's a fantastic arcade game. It is an absolute classic for a very good reason. And I had this story appear. I'd actually already come across this, but thank you to Technic for sharing it with me as well. Over on timeextension.com about a new Dig Dug game that's come out. But this is really weird. Check this out. So the headline here is a new Dig Dug game has just been released, but it's only playable for 2 weeks. Dig Dug New Frontier disappears on June the 30th. And of course, as at the time of recording, it is the 20th of June. So actually, you've only got 10 days to play this. What on earth is going on? And there is a trailer here. So we will hit play on this. This is Dig Dug New Frontier. And as you can see, we've got the old school graphics here with all the enemies and stuff that we know and love from the original game. A legend buried is digging his way back. There we go. Yeah, I'm not going to watch all of this, but it's available on a service called Gamisodes. And as you can see, graphically, I mean, it looks like a kind of a bad Flash re-implementation of the original game, I must say. But apparently there is quite a bit more to it. And I wasn't familiar with Gamisodes, I must say, as a platform. So also an interesting opportunity to learn a little bit about that. So the story by Jack Yarwood goes on to read, a new official entry in Namco's Dig Dug series has just been released on Android and iOS earlier this week, with the catch being that it is only going to be available for 2 weeks. Dig Dug New Frontier is described as a modern take on the classic arcade game and is a collaboration between the Australian game developer Sponge Games, Bandai Namco and interactive media platform Gamisodes. It was released on June the 17th and is being offered as a playable title on the Gamisodes app until June the 30th, at which point it will be removed, presumably never to return. We've reached out to a spokesperson for the devs to try and clarify this. Well, it seems they never got that clarification, unfortunately. Gamisodes, in case you've never heard of it, we don't blame you, is a media app that is pitching itself as the Netflix of interactive TV shows. It features a library of interactive television shows that combine animation with simple gameplay tailored towards a younger audience. The latest Dig Dug project, for instance, combines CG animated cutscenes with more traditional gameplay segments reminiscent of the original arcade game. This sees the player tunneling underground, blowing up enemies like Figars and Pukas. So it seems that Gamisodes launched last year as a platform and has links in the past, it says here, to a bunch of blockchain nonsense. Of course it does. Having partnered with Canadian animation company Wildbrain and SUI blockchain creator Miston Labs to release an interactive Inspector Gadget interactive TV show with card-based NFT drops. What is my air conditioning doing? It's one of those episodes, isn't it? Understandably, Dig Dug fans were disappointed upon finding this out, sharing their dissatisfaction on social media, leading the company behind the app to spam any posts mentioning NFTs with an assurance that this particular project is NFT free. Well, that's good. Can't believe they managed to ruin Inspector Gadget. How dare they? It's an institution. So yeah, Gamisodes seems to be some kind of streaming platform that mixes, cartoons with interactive playable elements aimed at children, which sounds like quite a cool concept, actually, if it's done right. And it looks like they've got the Dig Dug license. They're working with Namco to produce a game that is available on there for a very limited time. So looks like an interesting thing. Unfortunately, I don't have Gamisodes, and I don't really have the inclination to go out and pay for it just to check this out and see what it's all about. But cool to see a classic character coming back, and a bit of a strange circumstance around it as well. So, very interesting story. A very interesting piece of lost media appears to have resurfaced again this week. Thank you to Crafton over on my Discord server. And when I describe this as lost media, what I mean is that this was a documentary about a giant of the gaming world that was produced way back in 2010 by a company called VBS IPTV. Now, I wasn't familiar at all with VBS, so I had to go and look it up. But apparently it was a streaming platform that was owned by the people behind Vice and actually produced some really interesting documentaries and things about the gaming industry and kind of stuff that Vice is known for covering. And then they shut it all down and the whole thing went offline and a lot of that stuff was lost. But it seems that someone on YouTube managed to get hold of and preserve one of those documentaries. And as I say, it has been shared again this week. Now, it looks like this was first uploaded in July 2023, although it has been unlisted since then, and it only got 347 views. So, very intriguing video indeed. And it's on a channel called Juan Carlos, which has 8 subscribers. So, the mystery just deepens and deepens, doesn't it? But anyway, let's have a look at this video. Now, I haven't actually had the chance to sit down and watch this properly. I've had this waiting so I can sit and watch it and give it my full undivided attention on the TV, because this looks like a really well-produced thing. And it's about Sid Meier, so the guy behind the Civilization games, of course. I think that's probably what he's best known for, but yeah, did some others as well. Pirates and Railroads and some other stuff as well over the years. But yeah, of course, a really huge name in the gaming world, and I think it's quite hard to overstate his contribution to the world of game development and the history of this industry. So fascinating to see this documentary. And what this is it does talk a bit about his history and stuff, of course, but it actually follows him for 48 hours while he is judging and also participating in a game jam at Michigan University, which was apparently the university that he actually studied at as well. So there is a description here, which I think is probably from the original streaming platform. So we'll just read this out. I don't want to play too much of this because, like I said, I do want to take the opportunity to kind of sit and watch it properly. But the bump here is, what if I told you about a man who's etched his name in the annals of game design like a digital Michelangelo? I presume this came from the streaming platform anyway, and not from Juan Carlos himself. A mastermind whose craft has spanned from Civilization 1 to 4 to Pirates to Railroad Tycoon. I think that's right. And countless more. Yes, I'm talking about Sid Meier. The potential of games so entrances Sid, he's convinced they'll one day take over the world, and he's bent on sparking that revolution in a new generation of creators, particularly those who hail from his alma mater, the University of Michigan. Let's walk with Sid down memory lane back to Michigan's campus. It's here he's returning to judge, and why not participate in the 7th annual Wolverine Soft 48-hour game design contest. This is no stroll through the park, mind you. It's a veritable showdown between coders and designers in a pulse-pounding race to birth a new game from scratch in a mere 48 hours. So there you go. Talks a bit about his history at the university and his education there, of course, and how that kind of jump-started his career and his passion for creating games. But yeah, so this is a game jam, and these are competitions. If you're not aware of the concept, I'll very briefly talk about it. These are these competitions where game developers all come together over the course of usually a weekend, and the aim is to have produced a game by the end of the weekend. And generally it has to be completely original and produced within, kind of entirely produced within that weekend to a theme that is set by the organisers of the jam. And Sid was invited to judge this and decided to also participate in it and create his own game as well. So it's around 24 minutes long, this documentary. This is an event that took place back in 2010, so this is a real piece of history. And yeah, like I say, I haven't watched it yet, but it looks absolutely fascinating. I will link this down below so you can check it out. Thank you ever so much for sharing this, and I might just have to grab a copy of this as well, just in case it does go missing. Like I mentioned, it does appear that it was first uploaded in 2023, but seems it's doing the rounds again now, and that can only be a good thing. So there you go. Sid Meier 48-hour game jam documentary. Links down below in the usual places, as per all of the other stories, as per usual. And on that note, I think that brings us around rather neatly to my regular video of the week feature, wherein I feature a video that I have seen in the previous week here on the YouTubes that has educated or entertained or enlightened or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Quite often they are retro and or vintage computing and or gaming related. Quite often they aren't. Quite often there's one. Quite often there's more than one. But I'm very proud to announce this week that it is just the one video, and it is very much on topic too. So yay, go me. And on that note, I will say that every week I do genuinely, just before I sit down to record this segment, I do genuinely open my YouTube watch history and have a scroll through and look at all the stuff that I have watched in the past week. And as I kind of mentioned or alluded to last week, I have this ongoing midlife crisis thing going on, I think, where I've been watching a lot of content to do with tiny houses, off-grid living, narrowboats, van life, that kind of stuff. I think a man gets to a certain age and he starts to feel the you know, a calling to go and forge his own path, to escape the rat race, and to, you know, go and do his own thing, I think. Maybe it's just me. I'm not sure. But anyway, if I do take on such a project, you will be the first to know. No firm commitments on that as far as I'm concerned yet. But I did find one video in my watch history that was relevant, that I did enjoy rather a lot. And it is related to this box that has just appeared on my desk. So this is a graphics card, which was actually, this was a very good friend of mine sold this to me at a really, really reasonable price that I couldn't say no to. Probably a year or so ago now. I think I did talk about it on the channel at the time. So this is the box for my Radeon RX 7800 XT. It's just numbers and letters. I think it's a good graphics card. Don't know. Seems to run Stalker 2 okay, and that's all I really care about. But as you can see, the box here, all right, we've got this robot-looking guy on here, and this kind of graphic. Look, it says gaming. It says gaming. That's how you know it's a gaming graphics card. But yeah, I must say it's kind of a bit lackluster. Oh, my desk is moving on its own. It's all kicking off this week, isn't it? There we go. Kind of a bit lackluster compared to the graphics cards boxes of the past. If you remember the 90s, I think my very first card would have been a Voodoo 3. And of course, the Voodoo cards were well known for their really kind of striking, bold, and kind of single-coloured designs, weren't they? With like the you know, the faces on them. Of course, there were the GeForce cards with the sexy fairies and things, these 3D rendered things, monsters and ogres and things that were designed to look like they were from games, but of course weren't actually from any kind of specific game. And this video, finally getting to the point, is over on a channel. It's by a guy that you may have heard of, a guy called Clint, over in America. I think he's been doing this YouTube thing for a while now. And he has a channel called LGR, but this is actually on his second channel. So, yeah, always good to shine a spotlight on a small YouTuber like this. Joking aside, this is actually a really interesting look at a book that he recently picked up, which is called Overclocked, an archive of graphics card box art. And it's a little kind of postcard-sized book. And it's a load of scans of those graphics card boxes, particularly from that kind of late 90s, early 2000s era. So we'll just skip ahead a little bit. But it's a really fascinating looking book. And it has all of the classics in here, all of the big hitters. So the early GeForce cards, you know, the FX 5000 series, stuff like that. Stuff that I remember from back in the day. All of the Voodoo cards are in there, including one of the modern day recreations. And his, as he's just showing here, the ATI Radeon stuff from back in the day as well. All this wonderful 3D rendered, the Matrox Mystique. The funny thing about this as well is, as he was flicking through this book, I thought, Matrox Mystique, I remember that one. That's one that really stood out. And he actually does point it out as well. Huge advertising campaign around that. And we did actually have a Mystique at one point. I do very, very vividly remember having that box in our house. But yeah, it's just a load of scans of graphics card box art. There's no information about the cards themselves, which he does, you know, he does kind of mention, and perhaps is a little bit disappointed that it would have been nice to at least have, like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 lines of information about release dates and stuff for each card. And they're also in no particular order either. They're all just kind of all jumbled together and kind of in this little book. But fascinating to see these, and it's a real slice of history as well. Like I say, you don't see these sexy robots and things quite so much nowadays. It's all gone a bit, I mean, it's all right, you know, modern day, bold colours and stuff. Yeah, it's not a bad design, is it? But you can't say no to a fairy in a string bikini, can you? So there we go. That is Overclocked, an archive of graphics card box art. And it's just a little 10-minute long video, unscripted, just Clint showing off something that he's recently picked up, this little book. And unfortunately, it was a limited print run, and they are no longer available. I did look at picking one up myself as well, because I did think it was a very cool thing to have. But anyway, nonetheless, it is documented in this video, so we can all live vicariously through Clint and check out these awesome bits of graphics card box art. So there you go. That's over on LGR Blurbs. That is linked down below, along with all the other stuff that I have featured this week. Let's talk a little bit about myself. Now, there comes a time, of course, when every ramble must draw to a close. I know, it's disappointing, but we have indeed reached that point in this week's ramble, so it's time to wrap things up. And usually, in a week when I release a main channel video, I take the opportunity to give it a bit of a shout out, a bit of a quick overview, and have a look at how it's done within the first couple of hours, just to drive a bit more traffic in that direction, you know? You can't blame a guy for wanting to promote his own videos, but this week I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about my findings and try to promote something, I guess, that I've discovered this week. And all right, I am quite often late to these things. I'm sure there are some of you out there who are well aware of this already, but there's always at least one or two people who don't know. So this is for your benefit. Now, this video is all about a project called Bazzite. And Bazzite it's an operating system. It's a Linux-based operating system that is built on top of Fedora, specifically Fedora Silverblue, which is an immutable OS. So the operating system itself is basically read-only, and anything that runs on top of that is kind of containerized and separated from the kind of core OS itself. And it's a concept that's becoming more and more popular in the Linux world, and not something I really had much experience with. But in this case, this is an OS that is specifically targeted towards gamers. So what they've done is they've taken all of Valve's work on SteamOS on the Steam Deck, of course their little handheld Linux-based console, and what they've done is they basically containerized all of that stuff and stuck it on top of Fedora Silverblue and called it Bazzite and made this gaming OS. There's a lot more to it, and I will talk about a bit more about some of their other work in a second as well. But yeah, of course, the thing about the Steam Deck and about Steam OS is that Windows has ruled the roost for gaming for the longest time. I mean, Linux gaming has been, I think it's fair to say it's only in recent years that it's kind of all finally started to come together. And a big part of that is the work that Valve has been doing. And of course, that means that most of the great games of all time, and even games being released today, only have native Windows versions. And of course, they don't run on top of Linux without some kind of emulation or wrapper or something to translate those Windows system calls to Linux system calls. So there is a project called Wine that has always existed, and there have been, I say always existed, it seems to have been around forever as far as Linux is concerned. It's certainly one of the old school projects. And there have been other projects over the years to fork it. Obviously, it's all open source, to fork it and create derivatives of it. But perhaps the most successful one in recent years is Proton, which was created by Valve and is specifically targeted at games, as you might expect. So basically, you can run a Linux operating system on the Steam Deck, SteamOS, and you can browse through Steam, essentially in big picture mode, so it's like a kind of a consoleized type interface. Pick your game as you would do on Windows, hit install, it will download from Steam, it will install it, it will run it, and the OS stuff underneath is completely transparent. You have absolutely no idea that it's not running on the platform that it was originally intended for. It is miraculous. It is kind of crazy to see just how well it works and how quickly it's come together over the past few years as well. And yeah, so of course, Steam only officially released SteamOS for the Steam Deck, not for kind of commodity hardware. So there have been a few other projects. Hollow ISO is the one that I played with about a year ago, and I think they basically just took SteamOS and basically kind of repackaged it and tweaked it a bit and kind of just distributed it as is. Whereas Bazzite, as I say, is completely rebuilt from the ground up on top of Fedora. And this really blew me away. I mean, I've watched some videos as well quite recently that have shown that the games that, when you actually run games under Proton, under Linux, they actually run better than they do on Windows. I didn't actually test that myself on this particular hardware in this video, unfortunately, but I certainly got the impression that there's a lot of stuff that would have been unplayable on the VCS before. It's not a powerful system. It's a embedded Ryzen system. That's what I've been using for testing this, with integrated graphics and stuff. A lot of stuff that either wouldn't have run at all or that would have been completely unplayable, and actually is quite nice and quite pleasant to play under Bazzite. So that really blew me away. And not only that, it also has this full-blown KDE desktop environment as well. So if you want to use it as your desktop operating system, you can do that, despite the fact that it is predominantly designed as a kind of a more convenient version of SteamOS aimed specifically at running Steam and running games. There's this whole other side to it as well, which is, having used a lot of different Linux distros over the years, I was very impressed. Shall we switch to the Bazzite website? There we go. Having used a lot of different Linux distros over the past 25 plus years, I thought it was one of the nicest desktop environments I've seen, one of the nicest setups. And yeah, the performance is great. The selection of packages is great. I'm singing its praises like they're paying me to say this, and they absolutely aren't. I just really kind of want to get the word out. But one thing that I did discover as well off the back of this that I also wanted to give a bit more publicity to is this project called Lutris. Now, what Lutris does is it's a launcher that basically provides kind of scripts and kind of containers and pre-configured environments for running pretty much every game you've ever heard of. And not only every game you've ever heard of, but also kind of different gaming storefronts and platforms. So you can install the Epic Games launcher, whatever it's called this week, on there. The one I played with in the video is GOG Galaxy, which is GOG.com's own storefront and launcher. And you just install it under Lutris and run it, and it's all integrated with the desktop and everything, and you can go through and browse your games, download them, and run them as if you're running it natively on Windows. It is absolutely crazy, and it's all seamless. And it's all free and open source. And not only that, but you can install, I mean, I didn't even touch on this in the video because there's so much to Lutris, but it supports MAME and RetroArch, ScumVM, and essentially if you just point it at the ROMs wherever they are on your hard drive, it will download and configure everything ready to go, and then it's literally just a click. And not only that, you can also add it to Steam. So if you launch Bazzite in gaming mode, so it launches into Steam directly, you can actually run that stuff directly from Steam. It's all so well integrated. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I'm now going to sing its praises to anyone and everyone who will listen. I'm actually going to go home, and I'm going to finally replace Windows on my my proper gaming PC at home as well with Bazzite. That is how much of an endorsement I am prepared to give it. Although that said, I think I'm probably going to complete Stalker 2 first, because I would hate to lose that save game in the process and end up messing that up. But yeah, got to the last mission as well, actually, this week. There's a big thing that comes up on screen saying, do not proceed past this point if you have any unfinished business. So evidently it is kind of the grand finale of the game. And I have taken that opportunity to wander off and go and do some more exploring of the zone. Not that that's related to this video. So finally, the one other thing that I like to do at the end of these rambles is look at the analytics for my latest release. This was released earlier today. Very, very tight release. As mentioned, I was up until the early hours of the morning working on this. So yeah, apologies to the YouTube members who didn't get much of a crack at this before it went public. That is absolutely not usually the case as far as I'm concerned, but had to hit that Friday release self-imposed deadline, I'm afraid, especially as it's been a couple of weeks since the last one. But this one is doing rather well, so we'll just refresh this. This video has been up for 2 hours and 24 minutes, and it's just coming up on 1,000 views, 994 views in 2 hours and 20. Should we refresh it and see if we can catch the 1,000? Here we go. No, it's not gone up. Anyway, one new subscriber. And it says that's similar to the 840 to 1,100 that your videos usually get. But of course, it's at the high end as well. So I knew this video would do well. And I'm really pleased because, if anything else, I just want to get the word out about Bazzite. I think it's a wonderful thing. And I hope a lot more people start covering it as well. So really cool project. I'm a fan, as you can probably tell. Video's doing well, which is great because the past two in particular haven't done all that great. But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So, yeah, I am waffling now. I'm probably going to go for a bit of a snooze once I've cobbled this one together and got it uploaded to my second channel and, of course, to all of the podcast platforms as well. But thank you ever so much once more to my ever-growing audience who are tuning in every single week. Looking forward to enjoying a little bit more of this hot weather this evening and then hopefully some very cool thunderstorms tomorrow night. I hope they don't end up passing us by, as they sometimes do. So thanks for joining me. That's all I got. And all that's left is to say bye.